In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome, everybody, to the Get Fundable podcast. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of this auspicious podcast event. Today, I've got something for you that I'm going to help you kind of dive into where I've been over the last few months, the mental space of the difference between financial literacy and borrower education. We're going to be exploring kind of what is each, how they relate together, and you're going to be very, very surprised at some of the things we discover, some of the research my team, my producer Sky, has done, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this one. So I'll be right back, and we'll get started. All right, everybody, welcome back. So Merrill Chandler here, your host of Get Fundable, and this is live streaming, and we're recording for our podcast audience. We're live streaming to our Get Fundable channels, Facebook, etc., because this one, everybody's got to know what's going on with this particular event. What we're establishing today is the difference between financial literacy and the opportunity to actually become an educated borrower. And there's a huge difference. So let me kind of back up a little bit and give you some insight as to where I have been. It wasn't a few weeks ago that both in the social channels for FICO, as well as apparently they sent an invite to previous attendees of FICO World, but there was a call for presenters. And these presenters, they were being vetted for presenting in April of 2021 for the FICO World 2021 event. And the funny thing is in this event, they are branching out, because this is the first time I've been attending for 3 years. This is the first time that they have actually called to expand their presenter base. So I went through the application with my team, and I spent a lot of time because I wanted to know if I could have a room full of 30, 50, 100, 200 lender underwriters and lender C-level executives, right? Lender executives. What would I want to say to them? And what it came down to is it is time to level up. Financial literacy and financial literacy programs are not enough given the current environment that for automatic underwriting and the entire lending environment, especially as a result of the COVID thing that we have experienced recently. So I prepared the name, I prepared the initial bullet points, and they kind of had me outline what my presentation would be about. And the main points of this presentation and I don't even know if they are ready to allow a borrower-facing organization, a borrower educator, in front of lenders. There's going to be a lot of great things come as a result of this, because if they're ready, if FICO says, you know what, we want to ramp up borrower education among our lenders, you bet your sweet patuka, since they've invited me 3 previous times in a row, I'm likely to be accepted as one of the presenters. If they aren't ready yet, remember, FICO is a lender. Their clients are lenders. And if FICO isn't ready yet for borrower education, then it's likely that they're not going to choose me as one of the presenters. So it's going to be a lot of it's going to be interesting to see what happens here over time, especially the next few months. But when I was doing my research and of what I wanted to present to lenders is that I did a complete review of the top 4 lenders, so that to all the tier 1 lenders, Bank of America, Citi, Chase, and Wells Fargo, and looked at what their financial literacy programs were. Chase has the credit journey, each one of them have a particularly branded version. But when I went into each one of them, because I have an account with all but Citi, because I only have three credit cards, all tier 1, and 3 out of the 4 are represented. So one of the things that came to me was, what do lenders currently provide, and why do they currently provide it, and what would happen if everybody seemed to level up, if they started taking borrower education more seriously? And that's what my presentation was about. And I did some initial numbers, some initial research about how that when individuals are committed to increasing their borrower awareness, right, becoming professional borrowers, becoming schooled in what underwriting criteria are required and how to align their borrower behaviors and their borrower profile with what lenders are looking for. When they are educated that way, their success goes through the roof. And all of this will be presented and documented. All right. Well, one of the things that is this part of this conversation was, what is borrower education compared to financial literacy? Because every single one of the lenders referred to financial literacy. That's the catchphrase. That's the phrase that's currently being used to educate consumers. And the second I use the word consumers, this is how I want to frame it, right? Consumers need financial literacy. Borrowers need borrower education. And so one of the things that I look at here, one of the things that I establish is, how do we do this in a way that creates how would I approach these FICO presentations to give lenders some valuable intel that they may not be aware of right now. And so it all started with this. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let's take a look at this. For those of you, these graphics will be, if you're listening, these graphics will be in the they will be in the written version of this. And if you are watching, if you have a chance to watch, these graphics really outline the difference between, let's say over on our left, we have the borrower, and over on the right, we have the lenders. And there's this vast chasm that exists between the two of them. And that chasm we call fundability or lack of fundability. Are you fundable or not fundable? Because the bridge between here is fundability. And so I'm going to show you some examples of what things are, what things have been used to outline financial literacy, right? So some of the big, I don't know if I call them thought leaders. They're the biggest voices in the marketplace. I hesitate to use the word thought leader because they're not leading us forward. They're teaching us old, dilapidated, and sometimes outright wrong information. So let's take a look. So these are the opposing cliffs that I wanted to show you, that the chasm that exists. So first thing, and again, I give credit to Sky Copier, our producer for the podcast, and my content manager. Take a look at this. So I'm going to pull over here. This is from Dave Ramsey's website. Dave Ramsey is a proponent of being debt-free. And so let's look at exactly what he describes as financial literacy. Financial literacy, by his definition, is the possession of skills that allow people to make smart decisions with their money. I would concur. Now, but which people? Because when you talk about budgeting or you talk about preparing for emergencies, you're talking about about people, consumers, people who need to plan for use of money. And he has some very interesting and very well thought out strategies for the use of cash. The other thing that he has is but when he talks about debt, he immediately goes on the warpath. And I've spoken about Dave Ramsey before because we have completely different positions. If you are a Dave Ramsey follower, at some point, his market are individuals who buy a home and want to stay in that one home forever. They buy a car with cash. So you save up your money and then buy your car with cash. And get rid of any debt that you have as quickly as possible. And little to no use, preferably in his world, no use of credit cards, all cash, or debit cards would count for that. The problem is that the financial literacy teaches people about the terms, right? What is debt? What is credit? What is, and we'll go over some of these in a moment, but he's talking about a big part of financial literacy focuses on understanding how the time and money people spend paying off debts hurts their ability to invest in the future. Now, on its face, that's a reasonable definition. I have no problem with the definition, except where it comes to what I call leverage. The idea is that if the use of other people's money allow you to leverage your time and your money in a way that creates greater results, even for investing in your future, right? I have many clients. They're real estate investors, entrepreneurs, right? Small business owners of every kind. And all of them have, the vast majority, I can't say all because I don't know, but 99% of them have used other people's money to leverage, to grow their business, to expand. That requires a credit profile that a potential lender would look at and say, hey, how do they rank? And do I want to give them money? So if someone does not ever plan on making more than your W-2 income ever in your life, it is likely you're going to want to use other people's money, OPM, in order to leverage, to create a bigger a bigger life and more opportunities for yourself. So here's the problem. This is where, so when it comes to financial literacy, teaching people how to save money and what percentage of your paycheck to save, his recommendation of 10 to 15% is awesome. But saving 10% of your paycheck and living on whatever remains does not allow you to invest in other opportunities, or grow your life in ways that may be more fulfilling for you. So think of it this way: if you want to leverage, then other people's money is the only way to do it. And therefore, if we're going to use other people's money, we have to engage in a significant way the credit system. And the credit system, especially since 2008, has moved significantly, universally for many banks, into what we call, and what we've discussed in the past, is automatic underwriting systems, AUSs. These automatic underwriting systems are measuring 40 borrower behaviors and your personal credit profile to see whether or not they want to give you money. How you treat old money, the money you've already borrowed, is indicative of how you would treat new money. But if we're not sending a message that you know how to manage somebody else's money, no one else is going to give it to you. And that's where financial literacy and borrower education diverge. So let's take a look at another website that we have here. This what I'm showing you now is actually a financial literacy test from a debt consolidation company. Now, a debt consolidation company, be very careful. These guys are using this as a way to hook you into seeing how much debt you have and then doing a consolidated payment. These are not consolidation loans. And these people right here will ruin your credit. It's like a homegrown Chapter 13. FICO measures the use of consolidation companies, not loans to consolidate, but consolidation companies where they bring all your payments into one lower payment and negotiate with your creditors. That is going to kill your credit profile. And yet they have a financial literacy test here. So let's take a look here. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit more for those of you who are watching online. Again, snapshots of this will be put into getfundablepodcast.com. All right. So taking a look here. Let's make this a little bigger still. All right. All right. So how much money should you put into savings account every month? Well, I kind of gave that one away from the Dave Ramsey section, but approximately 10%. Okay. 10%. Now, notice, what are the 5 factors that add up to making your credit score? Now, I know what these are. Many people do not, but it's payment history, utilization ratio, new credit, length of use. It's number D. But it's not a nice smile, a winning attitude, and a promise to be more responsible. But these 5 factors are what FICO is willing to give to the public, right? It isn't their algorithm. These areas are counted, but in each one of these areas, there are 5 to 15 different trackable measurements. Payment history, but what type of payment history are you talking about? Is it by the due date and time? Utilization ratio, every new applications, but over the last 3, 6, 12, and 24 months, the 24-month look-back period. Each one of these has a myriad of other measurements. So yes, this is true, but it's not the whole story. What's the most income you should use on monthly credit card payments, right? Well, it should never use more than some of these are not even correct. No more than 10% of what you bring home. As much as it takes to pay off your debts every month. No more than 30% of your gross income. Well, that's actually indicative of what they're saying is the maximum debt to income ratio. So they say that it should be no more than 41%, but a mortgage is 35%. Some unsecured credit cards are 30%. So they say 41, but we would get that question wrong. Because I filled this out before, and I actually said no more than 27% because that's the conservative estimate. They say 41%. You're in yellow zone, not a green zone, if you have 41% debt to income ratio. Now, one of the things that is really striking and that is very different, they say, how often can you check your credit report for free? They don't tell you that it's annualcreditreport.com. They don't tell you it's your consumer disclosure files. They say it's once a year, but as we know, because of COVID, it's now, we can do it weekly. We can get a credit check from annualcreditreport.com, but there are no scores there or no legitimate scores that are associated with it. How much money do you need for a down payment on a traditional mortgage? They're saying that is something you need to know for financial literacy. You don't need to know it because if you walk in, you talk to any mortgage broker, they're going to tell you it's 20%, and then you can plan from there. So what I'm trying to share with you here is that some of these things are completely irrelevant. Financial literacy is relatively meaningless when it comes to building a personal borrower reputation where lenders are going to lend money to you. Everything that they're talking about, what does APR stand for? Yes, you need to know what APR means, so that fits in financial literacy, but annual credit report, if you're building an awesome profile, we don't care if you have 700% APR because we're not going to carry personal balances on the personal profile. That's not part of how to be fundable and attract other people's money, right? Lender money. We care about the APR on the business side, but we don't want to carry balances on the personal side especially in revolving or on the revolving accounts. And then we only want a mortgage or an auto loan and installment loans. So how is net worth calculated? It's assets and liabilities. That's a great question for financial literacy. And how should you check your credit prior to making a major purchase? Well, at least 6 weeks, because 30 days, 4 weeks is a reporting cycle. So it gives you 2 weeks to make a change, right? Okay, that's a good question. Is it enough? Is this what you need to know to be a reputable borrower? No, it's not enough. How many payments do you have to make before penalty APR can be removed? At least 6, at least consecutive payments. But what they don't tell you is this is a lender policy that varies from lender to lender. There is no statute, there is no law or statute that governs that it's at least 6 consecutive payments. It's just what I don't know where they got that one from. I know that it's true for some banks, but again, some of these, they're offering this test. When you Google financial literacy, this test comes out, and they're not helping you by giving you even the questions to ask. What are the 3 C's of creditworthiness? Capacity, character, and collateral. But if we're doing this right, the character is what they're calling your borrower behaviors. There's 40 characteristics, and so all they do is lump all that into the word character. Again, not enough. What are the 3 types of expenses in your budget? Well, there's fixed expenses, like a monthly payment for an installment loan, a mortgage or otherwise. Flexible payments, like a revolving account might be flexible. I can pay a minimum payment, or I can pay it all off. And discretionary, what's left over after my debts, right? So that's good in theory to help if you're teaching high schoolers about how to plan to use money. But notice this one. What kind of credit card can you get with bad credit or no credit score? First of all, you can get secured, but that's not necessarily true, because if you have bad credit and you burned one of the sister banks, you're not going to get a secured credit card from Wells Fargo if you burned Chase. It's not going to happen. So this is so they're saying, oh, secured cards are an option, but you have to vet the banks. You got to find out what those banks are offering. Again, not good education. What federal law protects your rights for abusive collection tactics? Well, you don't need to know that. It's Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, but you don't need to know ultimately what that is, because the collection agencies have changed radically in my lifetime as part of this business. There are far more legitimate collection agencies that actually abide by the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act than ever before as a percentage. There's high penalties for violating the law. But as a functional piece of intel that you need, you don't necessarily need to know that the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is, because you're going to go look it up and enforce it on your own, right? If you've been egregiously injured, you're usually going to use a credit counselor or an attorney to assist you. And then how long does it take for an account to go into collections? Now, this is complete BS. They're going to tell us that it's after 30 days of non-payment. No, that's when it goes 30 days late and goes delinquent on your credit report. It doesn't go to collections usually for most tier 1, 2, and 3 banks for 90 days. You're going to get a 30, a 60, and a 90 before it gets sent to collections. It says go to collections. Now, they're going to be trying to collect from you every minute that you miss. How many of you have received a phone call after 5 days past the due date? Not 30 days late, not delinquent, but 5 days past 1 day past the due date. You get an email. Hey, by the way, you missed your payment. That's 1 day after non-payment. So This is completely this is bad consumer education. Consumer education. What are the names of the 3 credit bureaus in the United States? Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Worth a tidbit of knowledge to know if you need to dispute or otherwise. What are the 2 types of personal bankruptcy filings you can make? Well, it's Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, but you're never going to file one of those without consultation of a bankruptcy attorney. So notice how some are very relevant questions, some are completely irrelevant to any consumer. But notice every one of these are based on consumer perspective, not a borrower, much less a professional borrower perspective. How long do credit inquiries affect your credit score? It's 12 months, but they say that it's 6 months. But remember, as we talk about in the boot camp, as we talk about in my book, it affects your credit score for 12 months, but it will affect your fundability for 24, the full 24-month look-back period. What's the retirement plan you get through your employer called? It's a 401k. And that's good to know for those people who have them or are employed such that they would have this as one of their benefits. What debts cannot be discharged by bankruptcy? It's student loans, child support, alimony, and court judgments, some court judgments. All those are true for most states, except for court judgments. You can do a bankruptcy against court judgments. But federal tax liens, which is not even on here, is one of the things that cannot be discharged by a bankruptcy. So we check our answers, and I got 17 out of 20 correct. That one's correct. That one's correct. Let's see what's the one that after they're saying an account goes to collection after 30 days of non-payment. Nonsensical. And I selected after 6 months because that was the. Oh, I selected after 30 days, and it's usually after 6 months without a payment. So, and then continuing, we got them right, we got them right, we got them right. The next one, so I said 6 weeks before, and they're saying at least 6 months prior. Do you know how much time 6 months is on a credit profile? I tell my clients all the time, if you're going for a major purchase, check your credit profile, the pull to see if there's any problems before you file. But my clients, my students, and you guys, all my podcast listeners, if you're wise, you're already subscribed to myfico.com, where you're getting daily updates of balances, etc., and you're getting quarterly updates of the status of all 28 of your scores, right? So nonsensical. And what's the last one that I got wrong? Last one I got wrong was, how much income? I said no more than 30%. They're saying no more than 10% of what you bring home. So this is I bring this up, guys, as an example of what they consider to be financial literacy. And that financial literacy, however, is kind of scary. Now, let's take a look at one last one that I want you to see. Now, the last thing I want to show you is a fascinating teacher's guide. This is high school and what they are teaching and some of the questions that they're asking. So let me grow this up significantly. And remember, I'm not teacher shaming or making fun of what's being taught out there. What I'm saying is it is enough, because I'm going to bring it back to what lenders need to see here in a moment. First things first, let's go down to section 1. Let's look at some, now it's a well-organized, presentation, but notice what it says here. Teacher's notes. All right. So let me make this a little smaller. There we go. We can see better. Okay. here are the answers. We're not going to get to the answers. So test your knowledge. List 5 things you can do to build a credit history. Okay. Establish a steady work record. Pay bills promptly. Open a checking account and don't bounce checks. Now, I teach the background of all of that in my boot camp about not just having a checking account, but we talk about having a false zero. We talk about how bouncing checks ruins your fundability, right? So pay all bills promptly is too nebulous. We teach that you must by the due date and time, not before, not after, but on the due date and by the due time. So they say bills promptly. So that means I can be 2 or 3 days late and still be prompt. So the language is vital here, and we're teaching high schoolers within a couple of days. And if you guys know any awesome Gen Zers or millennials like I do, promptly is going to mean ballpark it. We need to teach them more and better, because not paying this on the due date and by the due time is going to harm their long-term fundability. Don't bouncing checks. Open a savings account and make regular monthly deposits. Now, I would keep that in the financial literacy section, but number 2 and number 3 are borrower, because they directly impact your borrower reputation. Apply for a small loan using your savings account for collateral and then pay it back as agreed. There are actually easier ways. There is a difference between secured and unsecured when it comes to lenders. We want unsecured loans. So if this is the very first thing, that is a possibility, but there are some landmines associated with that very thing that are not talked about and not taught. So if we don't cover what those landmines are, then a high school student, a college student is going to go out, try and do that very thing, and they very well may harm rather than improve their fundability. Get a cosigner for a loan and then pay it back as agreed. That is a viable viable option, right? But I teach I teach cosigners that they need to be prepared financially to cover every one of those payments, because so many people come to me. Children stop paying a loan, they stop being employed, and parents are covering a car loan. And if you don't know, and then I've had parents come back and say, I have bad credit because my child didn't pay the bill and the parent didn't know to get on the notifications. That may sound like it makes sense, but unless you ask for it, generally speaking, lenders don't say, do you want to be notified as well? So unless you know specifically to answer that question, you may end up with a 30, 60, or 90-day late if your child hides from the fact they're embarrassed that they're not making the payment and they don't know the negative impact against your profile and your borrower fundability. So that's what we need to teach children, is that if you don't pay back this loan as agreed and you have a cosigner, you're going to ruin your parents or whoever, your guardian's fundability, and that's going to directly impact their ability to buy more cars, get another house, or move forward in their financial lives. But guess what? We don't teach in our financial literacy the responsibility that you can destroy somebody else by being too embarrassed to speak about the truth. All through here, there are word, how much can they carry safely, right? They're teaching good principles. But what I want to separate us from, and I'll stop sharing. And one of them was even, using a major, one of the things was a way to build your credit was to get a mall store card to help start building your profile. Again, if you're going to be a consumer, then getting a course, that's typical consumer behavior. But what we don't teach 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds in high school, 18-year-olds and college students, what we don't teach adults is that you need to start planning today for what you want to do in 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now. Because that's how long your credit stays, your open accounts stay on forever, and closed positive accounts stay on for 10 years. If you don't choose the right accounts, if they don't have the borrower education that tells them, hey, you know what? You're 18 now, but in 5 years, you're going to be 23, and in 10 years you're going to be 28, and you need to be prepared because you have no clue what you want to do with your life. So here are the principles to be a powerful borrower, and we're going to set you up. I always use the story. You may have already seen the podcast with my daughter Sharon. I would set up my credit accounts with my children and built their profiles, knowing that they would need good profiles and good borrower behaviors long before they knew that they would need them. Now my daughter just finished. She's on her second live and flip. She's got her first rental property, and her husband, I have spectacular profiles, all over 800, and they're now financing their second home, or the next live and flip. She didn't know she was going to do that when she was 18 years old, guys. Your children do not know. You as a millennial, that's listening, you as a Gen Zer, you might be 20 years old right now, and you have no clue what you're going to be doing 10 years from now. But the lenders, if you do the right choices, and it doesn't take any more time, any more money, any more effort than what you do with Venmo right now. But if you make the right decisions and you move forward with your borrower education instead of just financial literacy and knowing what annual percentage rate for APR interest, if you get the education, you're going to have open doors for the rest of your life. One of the things I say in my boot camp is you never know when the next opportunities come up, and you never know when your priorities will change. So to wrap this up, guys, my whole point, my mission from start to finish is to provide an inexpensive to free borrower education platform that millions of people can use to prepare themselves and their loved ones to be fundable now and in the near and in the distant future. That's my end game. A platform, and I'm working every day relentlessly. These podcasts are just the precursor to that financial platform. And tell me you haven't learned a whole grip of stuff from the last 100 episodes or so. You guys, I am committed to this. And so that's my end game with FICO. I'm looking forward to the moment. I would love to receive an email from FICO saying, you've been chosen to present these things. Please prepare your deck. Please prepare your presentation in full so that we can review it with you, because we're excited to have you present to FICO World 21. If they do that, then that means lenders may be able to take advantage and provide our borrower education to all of their cardholders, all of their customers. Imagine the top tier banks all providing real borrower education instead of credit path and pay your bills. Pay your bills promptly. Pay your bills on time. No, there's so many things they're not saying that they could if they were committed to true borrower education. And so that is my goal at FICO World 21. If I have the chance, that is my purpose for speaking with you today. This podcast is 100% about borrower education, trumping the wonderful attempts, but a lackluster education for our high schoolers, our college folks, for you and me. We need to be fully educated, guys. fully educated as borrowers so that we can make our financial dreams come true. And that makes the rest of our personal dreams follow suit right afterwards. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast. And I'm telling you right now, get educated and get fundable.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.